summer. Summer of 93 and the heat don't move. Bronx air thick like something waiting to be said. Mrs. Rovera's window fan just pushing it around. And the city don't care what it takes to sleep at night. Somebody put a boombox on the fire escape. 3rd floor Johnson Avenue, facing east. And the music felt like rain on something drying me. Something I didn't know was thirsty till it drank. I was 9 years old, the first time I heard it. Really heard it, not background, not noise, but a voice that said your life is syllables, your pain has rhythm, your block has a name. Before that night, I thought music came from somewhere else, some other city, some other kind of people. 9 years old and the fire escape changed that in one night. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase. The block remembers every name they painted over. I was 9 and I didn't have the word for what just happened. Just knew the silence before it was worse than anything. Just knew the music had been waiting for me too. Yeah, that summer every kid within 2 buildings knew the words. We didn't understand half of them, didn't need to. It was the way behind the words, the way the beat leaned back like it was tired too, but wasn't stopping for nobody. Cousin Darnell said, nah, this is us, this is ours. They made this out of nothing because nothing was all they gave us. Mrs. Robert leaned out her window sometime after 10, said, turn it down, baby's trying to sleep in here. But she said it's soft, the kind of soft that means I hear it too. And I needed it too, and I know what this is. Just hush now, let me hear the last verse. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase. The block remembers every name they painted over. We were 2 buildings of kids who finally had a language. The language was this beat, this voice, this July night. And we wrote our names in it before we knew we were writing. That boombox played till the batteries gave. Then somebody ran for more, wouldn't let the night go quiet. We didn't know we were building something that night on Johnson Avenue. We just knew the silence before it was worse than this heat. Years gone now and the fire escape is someone else's. 3rd floor, different tenant, different name on the buzzer. But if you stand on Johnson Avenue on a summer night, you can still feel the bass moving through the brick. Like it got into the building and never left. Like the music understood concrete better than architects. Like every wall absorbed what we put into the air and held it there. Still holding it still. The building remembers even when the tenants don't. The brick knows every frequency we ever pressed into it. The fire escape knows what it held that night, and it's been holding it every summer since. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase. The block remembers every name they painted over. We were building something every time we press play. And the block remembers, and so do we. This is what 9 years old felt like when the music finally found you. The summer of 93 and the heat don't move, but something in it moved me and it never stopped. If you know the fire escape on Johnson Avenue, you know the rest of this already.
The doorman, the doorman, the doorman, the doorman, the doorman, the doorman at Club Red doesn't ask questions. That's his job, that's his protocol. He reads everything he needs to know from the 3 seconds you spend approaching the rope. 37 people tried to get in tonight, 26 made it past the first look. 11 were turned away, and the 11 don't know yet that being turned away was a message. The protocol has no witnesses by design. That is the first thing you learn here. Whatever gets arranged in the back room of any establishment on this avenue was not arranged in any room that anyone else was present in to hear. The walls here are not listeners, they are professionals who keep their own counsel. The doorman positions stationed himself outside Club Red before the sun was fully down. Not because his shift started, because his presence before dark is part of the message. It tells you something about what the club thinks is worth protecting. And when I've been in 30 rooms on this avenue in 10 years of understanding its language, and I can tell you, the rooms that are really doing something close their ears first. They close the eyes of the room, then they open their mouths to conduct the actual business. Tonight there is business, and the doorman's 3-inch rope adjustment confirmed it. The protocol has no witnesses. That's how the protocol stays the protocol. What happens in the room that closes its ears stays in the only room that matters. The doorman read me in 3 seconds from the approach and stepped aside completely. 26 got through tonight. I was not the first and was not the last they passed. The protocol knows who it recognizes, and it doesn't explain itself to those it doesn't. I know a table in the back has been reserved the same way for 11 years. Not in anyone's name, in the shape of the understanding between the principals. The men who sit at that table don't carry anything that can be described in daylight terms. What they carry is the kind of knowledge that only moves in the dark and by arrangement. Tonight I sat adjacent, not at the table, but where the table could see me clearly, which is a different kind of participation and a more honest one for where I stand now. I watch the doorman from inside. That's the advantage I've been working toward all year. From inside looking out, you see what the outside crowd can't calculate or anticipate. You see the 3 seconds of assessment, the rope adjustment, the body language of the past, and you see the body language of the rejected, which is its own graduate level education, and what the street actually values underneath all the surface presentation of wanting. The protocol has no witnesses. That's how the protocol stays the protocol. What happens in the room that closes its ears stays in the only room that matters. I know a table in the back that's been reserved the same way for 11 continuous years. Not in the name, in the shape of an understanding between the principals who run this block. And the table's continued presence is the only record of every agreement made at it. The arrangement is never spoken, it's demonstrated, which is the superior method. Demonstration is harder to dispute than language and harder to deny in any form. Clarence taught me this on a Tuesday in January 3 years before I was ready to hear it. Said, the spoken agreement is the agreement that gets argued about in 2 years or less. The demonstrated agreement is the one that both parties remember exactly the same way. Tonight, the demonstration was 3 minutes at a corner of the right bar in the right room with the right person who understood what the demonstration was without explanation. The doorman never breaks his protocol, even when he knows both parties in a transaction, because the protocol is not about who he knows. It's about what the protocol protects. I watched him pass 2 men he's known for a decade with the same 3-second assessment, and that consistency is the entire point. That is why the room in the back stays quiet. The room that's really doing something keeps no record and wants no witnesses to speak. It communicates in gestures too small for anyone not fluent to read or interpret. The doorman is the last word in this particular grammar of the avenue's deeper language, and the only people who speak it are the ones who were taught it by the ones before them. Tonight, I spoke it for the first time without having to translate anything I said or meant. The protocol has no witnesses. That's how the protocol stays the protocol. What happens in the room that closes its ears stays in the only room that matters. The arrangement is demonstrated, not spoken. Demonstration. Resist the argument. That's what Clarence taught me on a Tuesday in January before I was ready for it. And tonight I used that lesson for the first time at the right table in the right room. The doorman reset the rope to its default position at exactly 2 in the morning, which means the evening had concluded its principal purpose, and the rest is us. The doorman, the doorman. every borough. Every extension cord running from the lamppost to the turntable. Every milk crate that held 1,000 records on a Saturday afternoon. Every generator humming underneath the music like a second heartbeat. Before the club, there was the park, always the park first. Before the VIP, there was whoever showed up at 4 o'clock sharp. Before the promoter, there was the DJ with 2 crates in the mission. And the mission was make this block forget his problems for 3 hours. DJ Ski set up at 4, was ready by 5 o'clock. By 6, there were 40 people. By 7, there were 200. The music did what the music always does without fail, which is pull the ones who need it out of wherever they were hiding from the heat. The summer air made everything louder than the monitors could explain. Bass from the speakers bounced off the apartment buildings and came back double. The walls close enough to answer. That's the Bronx acoustics. That's home. When B-boys held the park was the whole world. Before the promoter, there was just whoever showed up and showed out. DJ Ski ran the extension cord at 4 p.m. and by 7, 200 people who didn't need a ticket were already completely home. This is what democracy looked like before someone tried to charge admission. The B-boys came first. They always came first to every sound, like the beat was a signal only they could receive on that particular frequency. Spinning on linoleum brought from somebody's kitchen floor, or cardboard from the same alley as always. Same crew, same gravity negotiation. The Cipher formed before the MCs announced themselves to anyone. It just happened. The circle materialized out of the crowd, the way a crowd gathers around something that deserves full attention. The way water finds the lowest point and pools there completely naturally. DJ Ski moved between records like he was translating between languages fluently. The dancers responded like they understood the syntax without being taught, like their bodies were the grammar of what the music was actually saying. When B-boys held the park was the whole world. Before the promoter, there was just whoever showed up and showed out. The Cipher formed before anyone announced it or organized it. The circle materialized the way truth does, without permission or agenda. And everybody present was both witness and testimony at the same time. I've been to concert halls and theaters and arenas since that night. Been to events with production budgets larger than entire neighborhoods combined. And I have never felt what I felt in that park at 8 p.m. that Saturday. Standing between the speakers with 200 people who didn't need a ticket. This was the parliament. This was the Congress of the actual people. This was where policy was made in real time by the people it affected most. What the mayor's office was supposed to be and never was, and knew it. This was the original. Everything else is downstream from this part. This was before the industry decided what hip-hop was worth in dollars. This was the source, and the source was a park and a lamppost and an extension cord and a DJ who understood that music is not entertainment, is oxygen itself. The extension cord is still running from that lamppost in my memory right now. The music's still bouncing off those buildings and the walls of my chest. The circle's still forming every time I hear a beat drop right anywhere. This park is not a party. It's the beginning of everything we ever built together. And everything we built came back here to remember where it started and why. When B-boys held the park was the whole world. Before the promoter, there was just whoever showed up and showed out. This was the original. Everything else is downstream. Music is not entertainment, it's oxygen. DJ Ski understood that completely, and 200 people understood it too. Standing in that park at 8 p.m. Different park, same extension cord mentality every time. Find the lamppost, find the power source, make it happen with what you have. The park is still the most honest venue any of us have ever had. And every DJ who runs a chord from a lamppost is still completely right.
"3:45 in the morning on the Northside is when the city stops pretending it's asleep. It's not asleep. It's been awake the whole time, just running on a quieter frequency than daylight. I've walked this particular stretch of Northside at 3:45 more times than I can count now. And it reads different every time depending on what I've left behind in the hours that preceded it. This particular 345 follows the night that cost me what the night cost, and I'm counting it. Counting what I came in with at 6 yesterday and what I'm carrying at 345 this morning. The silk is still on my back, and the silk doesn't know what the night paid in its name for the hours. The silk is what I showed the rooms tonight, and the room showed me something the silk can't cover. I've been in the arrangement longer than I knew I was in an arrangement with a specific designer. I've been at tables that were set for me by a man who taught me the protocol for sitting at tables. And the protocol was genuine and the setting was managed, and both of those things happened to be true simultaneously, which is the most expensive education the Avenue has to offer to any attentive student. At 345 on the north side, the accounting looks different than it did at midnight when I was managing. At midnight you're managing forward, at 345 you're accounting backward, and the numbers are honest.
345 on the north side is when you count what you came with and what you're carrying home. The city's not asleep, it's been awake on a quieter frequency, watching the accounting happen. I came in with what I thought was an understanding, and the night offered me a more complete version.
The more complete version costs more than the first version, but it's worth considerably more too. And the north side at 345 is where you sit with the more complete version before the light. Simone is somewhere on the side of the city doing her own accounting at 345, I imagine. We've never discussed what 345 is for us specifically, but we both know what the hour is. There's a shared language between people who operate at this level. Not a spoken one, not a protocol. Just the knowledge that at 345 the books open themselves and you better be honest with them. Miss Delia has the third floor light still on. I can see it from the north side stretch I'm walking, which means Simone is still out somewhere, and Miss Delia is holding the light until she's home and safe. And the light is doing what it always does, being the kind of thing that holds without being asked, which is the same thing the genuine part of Clarence's teaching was doing underneath the managed part. Both of those things being true simultaneously is what the light at 345 is teaching me. The light is both a vigil and a policy, and the fact that it's both doesn't make it less of either.
345 on the north side is when you count what you came with and what you're carrying home. The city's not asleep, it's been awake on a quieter frequency, watching the accounting happen. Miss Delia's third floor light is on, and Simone hasn't come home yet, and the light holds without asking,
which is what the genuine part of anything holds. Without asking, without needing the managed part to know. And the managed part doesn't diminish the holding, which is what I'm learning at 345. I used to think wisdom was the thing that replaced confusion entirely when you had enough of the night. I used to think the accounting at 345 would get simpler the more times you did it correctly. What I've learned from enough 345 sessions on this particular north side stretch is different. Wisdom is not the thing that replaces confusion. It's the thing that lets you operate inside it clearly. You don't get less confused the more you know about the avenue. You get more precise about the confusion. The arrangement was real and managed simultaneously, and that precision is what I'm operating inside now. Clarence taught me a real thing through a managed lens, and the real thing is still real inside the management, which means I have something to give Rain to Julia that I didn't have 12 hours ago when I briefed him. Which means the night that cost what it cost also produced something that wasn't available before the cost. And at 345 you count both sides of the legend, which is the whole point of the particular hour.
345 on the north side is when you count what you came with and what you're carrying home. The city's not asleep, it's been awake on a quieter frequency, watching the accounting happen. Wisdom is not what replaces confusion, it's the thing that lets you operate inside confusion with precision.
And I have something to give Rain and Julia that wasn't available 12 hours ago before the cost. The night produced what it cost, and the north side at 345 is where you learn to assess.
Cipher. The Cipher. The Cipher forms at 9. Dissolves before the landlord wakes. That corner on 125th and Lenox has a memory. It holds the shape of every circle ever drawn in sneakers, every bar thrown into the cold air and left to find its home. Raymond was the first one in the circle every time, already nodding, already got 2 verses in his coat pocket, like he couldn't wait to get to school on Monday, like Monday was just the thing between him and this. I've seen Raymond step in that circle at 30 below with gloves off, because gloves slow the syllables and Raymond doesn't do slow. The way he'd pause right before the punchline landed, 3 beats of silence, then the whole circle nodded. He didn't need applause, didn't need validation. He needed the truth in the circle to recognize him, and it always did. And he always came back for that recognition. The Cipher doesn't forget a single bar, not one. Not one. The Cipher holds what the city couldn't be bothered to record. Raymond came prepared, 2 verses in his coat pocket in November. Every word he threw in that circle landed like something earned. This is what the library looks like when nobody gave you a building. Jerome would pace the outside first, 3 laps minimum before we step inside, like the circle needed earning. And when he stepped, it was with the weight of someone who understood that every word you said out loud was sworn testimony. Vanessa didn't rap, but she was always there, kept the energy honest, kept the ego checked. If your bar was weak, she'd give you this look, the kind that said try again, I'll wait. We have all the code we need. Some nights the trumpet from the jazz club 2 blocks down would drift over, and we'd ride it like a sample. And the city folded time on itself, 52 and 92 in the same cold breath. The Cipher doesn't forget a single bar, not one. Not one. The Cipher holds what the city couldn't be bothered to record. Jerome took 3 laps before we stepped inside the circle. Vanessa's silence held the standard tighter than any rule book ever could. The jazz horn 2 blocks east was a sample nobody cleared, but everyone felt. I've stood in 20 ciphers in 10 years on this block. Watch kids become MCs, become men, become fathers. Watch some step out of the circle for the last time, and still the Cipher held the shape of them in the air. Raymond's got kids now, doesn't come around much. Jerome moved to Jersey, Jerome's doing okay. The corner is a phone store now, or maybe a smoothie place. I never looked long enough to know, because I can't look too long. But the Cipher is still there in the frequency of that block, still there in the way the wind bends around that corner, still there every time someone opens their mouth to say something real. We didn't think about legacy then. We thought about the next bar, the next response, the next 16. How to say something true enough that nobody could check you. How to say something that lasted longer than the cold. Turns out the cold air was keeping score the whole time. The Cipher doesn't forget a single bar, not one. Not one. The Cipher holds what the city couldn't be bothered to record. The corner is a phone store now, but the frequency remains. And the Cipher doesn't forget, and neither does the cold air. It held Raymond's voice for 30 years, and it's still holding. Dissolves before the landlord wakes, that's always been the deal. The Cipher only works because it can't be owned. Raymond, Jerome, Vanessa, still in the frequency of that corner. The circle is still there for anyone cold enough to step inside.
They sent a man to my table at midnight who didn't know the table had a protocol. Sent him in a suit that was right for where he thought he was going, wrong for where he arrived. He sat down without being invited, which tells you the level of preparation he brought. And the level of preparation he brought tells you who sent him and why they thought it was wise. Silk, don't apologize for being silk. That's the first principle of the arrangement. If you come to a table wearing something that costs what this costs, and then explain yourself, you've already lost the argument. argument before it started. You've already conceded something important. Simone understood this. She told me once, while adjusting an earring very deliberately, the moment you justify what you're wearing is the moment you're no longer wearing it correctly. The man in the suit didn't understand this, and he sat down and he began to explain himself. And the silk on my back listened to every word he said and remembered none of it is relevant. I let him finish, that's protocol. You let a man finish his prepared remarks completely. Then I looked at the table and then at him and said, who told you where to find this table tonight? And the answer to that question told me everything the suit never could have told me by itself. Silk don't apologize. Silk doesn't explain itself to rooms that don't already understand. The man in the suit sat down without being asked and started explaining before I could speak. Who sent him and why they thought tonight was the right night. Told me what I needed to know. Simone saw it from across the room and adjusted her posture by 3 degrees.
That's the signal.
3 degrees means I see it. I've already started handling it from my end.
Trust the system.
The man in the suit represented a problem, not a dangerous one, an administrative one. Someone who knew enough to find the table, but not enough to know how to approach it correctly. Which means someone with partial information sent him, which means the information leaked. And when information leaks on this avenue, the leak has an address, whether or not you know it yet. Simone was at the bar by the time I was done with the suit. She moved without being asked, and positioned herself between the suit's exit and the door he came in through originally. That's the kind of awareness that doesn't come from being told, it comes from understanding what the room needs before the room finishes deciding that it needs it, which is the whole art. I watched Clarence from across the avenue once do this exact thing in 4 seconds on a Tuesday. 4 seconds and the whole board changed, and nobody else at the table saw it change. That's the level, not faster than the eye, but faster than the comprehension of what the eye saw. Silk don't apologize. Silk doesn't explain itself to rooms that don't already understand. The man in the suit sat down without being asked and started explaining before I could speak. The leak has an address, whether or not you found it yet. On a map you can read tonight. Simone moved to cut off his exit before I finished my last sentence with the man in the suit. The room handles itself when the people in it understand what the room requires from them. There is a version of this life where you explain yourself to every table you sit down at. And that version is exhausting, and ultimately it gets you nowhere worth arriving at. The table I sit at didn't ask me to earn it by explaining. It watched me arrive at it correctly, and then it made room. The way the avenue makes room for the ones who understand its grammar. The man in the suit will go back to whoever sent him with the answer he was sent to find. And the answer is, the table knows about the leak, and the leak is being handled as we speak. Not with urgency, not with drama, with the same 3-inch adjustment the doorman uses. Because urgency is the tell of someone who didn't expect to need to handle this particular thing. And we expected it. We expected exactly this, because Clarence taught us to expect everything to be 7 moves ahead of the table you're sitting at, which means ahead of every man sitting at it. The silk is the authority, and the authority doesn't raise its voice in rooms that already hear it. Simone understands this, the way she understands the 3rd floor light and the velvet on Wednesday. The man in the suit went home with his answer and his prepared remarks and his wrong table etiquette. And I sat at the table for another 40 minutes without saying another unnecessary thing. Because the table that understands you doesn't need you to speak, it needs you to remain. Silk don't apologize. Silk doesn't explain itself to rooms that don't already understand. The silk is the authority, and the authority doesn't raise its voice in any room tonight. The table watched me arrive correctly and made room without being asked or instructed to. That's 7 moves ahead of every other man who sat here before and after and in between. The room, the room, the room, the room, the room, the room, the room,
The mic has a memory, and the memory is long. It remembers every voice that ever held it up to the truth. It remembers every lie that tried to pass through it. the mic rejected those. The voice cracked, the verse fell apart. They can buy the frequency, they cannot buy the frequency. They can own the building, they cannot own the language. They can trademark the logo, they cannot trademark the feeling of being 9 years old and hearing your life as syllables. I watch them try, watch them study us like anthropologists. Bring notebooks to the Cipher, record us to the park on Saturdays. Take everything home and come back 6 months later smiling with a product that looked like us but smelled like an office building entirely. The warp sample in my beat is not an accident or error. It's the shape of history when it's been handled roughly. When it's been used, the sound of a record played too many times. Cause the truth doesn't stop playing. The mic ain't corporate, never was, never will be. You can route it through their board and it comes out knowing the difference between the original feeling and the reproduction of the feeling. The mic knows and it rejects what isn't real without a moment's apology. The voice always cracks when the lie tries to pass. The mic remembers everything. I know what they want the surface without the depth underneath. They want the energy without the address that birthed the energy. They want the cool without the context that made the cool necessary. They want to wear the culture like a coat and leave the body behind empty. But the body is still here, cold awake, uncontracted and unapologetic. The body is still holding the mic in the park at midnight on a Tuesday. The body is still saying things don't have a home in their catalog. And the playlist they build for people who never been to the block once. The gray paint keeps coming and the gray paint keeps failing at its job. Because what's underneath it is structural, it holds the entire building up. You cannot paint over the foundation without the building noticing the weight. The mic ain't corporate, never was, never will be. You can route it through their board and it comes out knowing the difference. They want to wear the culture like a coat and leave the body behind. But the body is still here, cold and awake and uncontracted and standing. And the block has been noticing for 30 years what they keep painting over. I am not a product, I am a condition that keeps producing. I am what happens when a community talks to itself long enough to get fluent. I am the accumulated frequency of everything they try to erase with paint. And I am still here, still transmitting, still loud enough to hear across boroughs. The mic ain't corporate, the mic is specific and personal and local. It knows the difference between a verse that costs something real to say and a verse written by committee in the room with catering on the table. Take the mic, hold it up to the industry and let it speak the difference. Hold it up to the gray paint and let the walls answer underneath it. Hold it up to the borough and let the borough testify what it holds. Neither is the Cipher where Raymond came prepared at 30 below. Neither is the Overpass where Darius argued in error so every morning. Neither is the shoebox where Marcus kept what he loved under his bed. The mic ain't corporate and neither is everything that made us before the deal. And everything that made us is still here, still running, still transmitting. The mic ain't corporate, never was, never will be. You can route it through the board and it comes out knowing the difference. And if it ever sounds clean and processed and comfortable to anyone, then what you're hearing is the ghost of something they couldn't catch in time. Hold the mic up to the borough. The borough will tell you what's real right now. Ghost of something they couldn't catch it. It's still running through the frequency, still in every corner, and it still remembers what it called itself before the rename. I am not a product, I am a condition that keeps on transmitting. The mic remembers what the industry tried to forget and it won't stop.
Dusk finds you first, not the other way around, which is the thing nobody explains at the beginning. You don't find the night. You don't decide to enter the avenue when the light changes at 6 o'clock. The dusk was already looking for you before you turned the corner and found Clarence already posted. And everything that followed, because the dusk found you first and you were findable. I keep coming back to Johnson Avenue in the way that people keep coming back to the thing they paid into longest. Not because the avenue owes me anything. The avenue doesn't do owing, it does accounting. Not because I can change what the accountant shows I can't, and knowing I can't is what the night produced. I keep coming back because the avenue is where I understand the version of myself that the daylight approximates. The velvet is back on the door at Club Red, and the doorman has a new rope at the 3-inch adjustment.
and everything looks the way it looked at 6 o'clock the night this account began, and nothing is the same. Raymond Gia walks the avenue now at his own pace and his own protocol, half a step ahead of someone I haven't met. Clarence comes through occasionally with the coat button wrong in a way I now read without the wrong interpretation. Simone makes it home before Miss Delia's light goes out, because that's who Simone has always chosen to be. Yeah. And I walk the Northside stretch at 3:45, doing my accounting the way the night taught me to do it honestly. The night knows your name before the city does. That's what I said at 6 o'clock the first night of this account. But what I didn't know at 6 o'clock is what the night does with your name once it has it as its own property. It doesn't broadcast it, it doesn't use it against you directly, it doesn't protect it from anyone either. It holds it in the frequency of the avenue, the way the walls hold the arrangements that were made in specific rooms. Your name in the night's keeping is not a credential and not a threat. It is a record that the avenue maintains, and the avenue maintains its records better than the paper does, better than the daylight's official version. The night found me before I found it, and the night has been keeping my name since the first 6 o'clock coast. And the keeping has been both a management and a genuine thing simultaneously in the same breath, which is what everything on the avenue has been and will continue to be for as long as the avenue was the avenue. And the avenue has been here longer than me and will be here longer than Clarence and longer than any of the names. The night knows your name before the city does, and the night's knowing is not power over you, it's record of you. Dusk finds you first, and the finding is not a trap and not a gift, but a specific and particular accounting. I walked the avenue at 6, and the avenue received me, and the receiving was both real and managed in the same breath. And the breath is the same breath. The avenue breeds for everyone it finds when the dusk first finds them. And the record includes everything from the rope to the room to the coat to the 40 seconds at the table. Everything that has been genuine in this account, and some of it has been genuinely genuine underneath, stays. The real part of the teaching was real enough to survive the revelation that it was also something else. Miss Delia's light is the proof of this, real and vigil and policy simultaneously, and none of those are diminished. The doorman's protocol is the proof, consistent, because the consistency is the point, not just the performance. Simone's 7-second pause is the proof, honest hesitation in a world that awards constructed precision. Raymond Gia's watching quality is the proof, intact after being used, which means it was structural, not surface. Clarence's both is the proof, the most honest thing the avenue ever produced through a mouth which was his, and my own continuing presence on the north side at 3:45 is the proof that the accounting holds, that the night found me first, and what it found was worth finding and worth the keeping and worth the cost of this night. And everything that has been genuine stays, because the genuine is the structural part underneath the managed surface. The night knows your name before the city does, and the night's knowing is not power over you, it's record of you. Dusk finds you first, and the finding is not a trap and not a gift, but a specific and particular accounting. The genuine is the structural part, and the structural part holds even when the managed part reveals itself completely. Miss Delia's light, Simone's pause, Raymond Gia's watching quality, all structural, none of it surface. And the avenue keeps the record of the structural parts for longer than anyone currently on it will be here. The dusk will find Raymond Gia first one evening on the avenue, and he isn't expecting to be found at 6. And he'll turn the corner, and someone will already be posted in the code.
Afford it.
Yeah, before the internet there was a jacket pocket. Before streaming there was a Maxwell 90-minute tape. before algorithms decided what you heard. You heard what someone handed you on a 6 train. Marcus kept a shoebox under his bed, 60, 70 tapes, all labeled in his handwriting. Every DJ, every rapper, every set he ever captured on a recorder with a condenser mic, gaffer taped to a chair. The economy was simple. You got something, you gave something. You want DJ Clue? I got DJ Clue. What you got for me? Not money. We didn't trade in money, we traded in time. Someone spent their hours getting this, now it's yours, now carry it. The 6 train was the distribution network, Grand Central to Hunts Point. Every stop a potential handoff, a potential transaction, a community building its own infrastructure deep underground. This was how the music moved, before the music moved. This was the library that lived in your jacket. Tape, head to tape head, hand to hand through turnstiles. The internet they built before the internet had a name. This was ours, completely, unapologetically, permanently ours. Marcus gave me 3 tapes in exchange for 1. Said he was going deep into his collection for these. Said take the Rakim, take the Cool G rap, take the Big Daddy Kane. Said I'm giving you the foundation, don't let it sit on the shelf, the foundation. He said the word like it was weight, like these tapes were low-bearing, like the whole thing, the whole culture we were building together rested on whether people passed it forward or let it stop. I copied his tapes on my cousin's double deck, made copies of the copies, 4th generation hits on some of them. The sound degraded just enough to feel like something had been through something. This was how the music moved, before the music moved. This was the library that lived in your jacket. Marcus labeled every tape in his own handwriting, sometimes an asterisk, sometimes just the one word crucial. He never signed a name, but you could always tell his work by the care. Marcus didn't take credit, never put his name on anything, just a track list and pencil on the J card insert. He gave more than he got and did it like the math made sense, like generosity was a technology and not a sacrifice at all. I don't know where Marcus is now. Heard he moved to Atlanta in the late 90s. Heard he's doing something in logistics, fitting. The man was always moving things from where they were to where they needed to be. The shoebox is probably gone, the tapes are probably warped, but the music in them got out, got through, got everywhere. Because Marcus understood that culture don't move itself, someone has to move it. Some arts die behind locked doors, behind label deals, behind closed sessions. But this one was built to travel, built to be handled by many hands, built to have its edges worn down by passing through all those turnstiles. 4th generation hiss is not degradation. It's the sound of how many people needed this before it got to you. This was how the music moved, before the music moved. This was the library that lived in your jacket. And in the moving, it became permanent. Culture is a verb, not a noun, and Marcus conjugated it every Saturday. This is the scholarship. Here, learn this, pass it on. The 6 train still runs from Grand Central to Hunts Point and back. Every stop a potential handoff, still, always, even now. I still carry tapes, I can't play anymore, just to remember what it felt like to be handed something real. Yeah. Yo. The town cars. The town cars came up. The town cars came up. What 25th like they belonged there. 2 weeks in a row before anyone said what they were actually after. The A&R man wore a Kango that didn't fit right, which told me everything the business cards didn't. My man Devontae had bars like nobody I've seen on earth. The kind that made you stop mid-conversation, put your drink down. The kind that makes strangers look at each other like, you hearing this? The kind that only happened when Devontae was comfortable on his own terms. The label wanted Devontae comfortable on their terms, wanted comfortable in a studio they controlled on a schedule they owned with producers they hired, pointing at sounds they'd already decided would sell this quarter. They came with percentages that sounded generous until you counted the expenses deducted before percentages applied. The math was language designed to exhaust you into signing something. They came with business cards and compliments. Park their town cars on 125th like they own the curb. I'm sitting there thinking, cultivate means something specific. Something about soil and conditions and who controls the land and who keeps the harvest when the season finally turns. Devontae Devon came to me after the third meeting, 3 meetings. Said they keep asking me to cut the third verse. Said the third verse is the whole point of the track. Said, what does it mean if I take out the point? It means the song sells is what it means. It means the radio plays it. It means the check clears. But it also means the song is no longer the song Devontae wrote. It means it belongs to a version of Devontae that doesn't exist. I watch 4 MCs I respected take those deals in 2 years. And I watch 4 MCs I respected become unrecognizable in 3. Not bad people, just bet in a direction that had nothing to do with the block. They came with business cards and compliments. Parked their town cars on 125th like they owned the curb. Devon came to me after the third meeting, face gone quiet. Said, what does it mean if I take out the point? That question has been sitting in my chest for 20 years unchanged. The labels came and the labels found what they were looking for. Some of us had the armor for it and some of us didn't. And the ones that didn't, I don't blame them for it. Winter is long and the signing bonus is warm and the cold is very real. But Devon said no. In a conference room in Midtown Manhattan, said it quietly, took his demo back, took the subway home, played basketball for 3 hours, came back empty and full at the same time. That night wrote 6 new bars that nobody from that room would understand. Devontae is still here, still in the Cipher, still building, still whole. Doesn't have a major label deal or a billboard placement. Has the complete, unedited, uncompromised version of himself intact. The town cars don't come around 125th much anymore. The neighborhood changed in the way they always intended it to. The deals dried up when the sound moved on to someone else. But Devon still has the third verse. The whole point of the track. And the whole point is still the whole point 20 years in. They came with business cards and compliments. Parked their town cars on 125th like they owned the curb. And some of us gave them nothing. And the nothing we kept turned out to be everything worth keeping. Devon kept the third verse. That's the whole story right there. The A&R man's Kango didn't fit because it wasn't his. The language they spoke was designed to exhaust, not to clarify. Some conversations you don't finish, you just take your demo back and write 6 new bars on the train home, and that's enough. And that's enough.
The neon doesn't care what it illuminates. It just produces the frequency it was built for. And at 5 in the morning, the neon is illuminating evidence that the daylight will soon organize into a case. Raymond Jr. was on the corner when I came around the block on the second pass of the morning. I hadn't told him to be there, which means someone else had, which means the board moved again. Raymond Jr. had been on the avenue all night. I could see it in how he stood at 5 in the morning. The way someone stands when they've been watching long enough to see more than they were ready to see. I've been careful with him. 8:15 entry, clearances 2-second approval, proper posture briefing. What I hadn't briefed him for was what to do when the room shows you what it actually is. And the room had apparently shown him something while I was occupied with 36 hours of counting. He looked at me from the corner with the particular expression of someone who has new information, not alarm, something more controlled than alarm, which was worse because I taught him that control. I told him in October, the alarm faces information your adversary can use against you directly. Keep the face controlled and do your reading under the controlled face where nobody can see it. Raymond Jr. had the controlled face on at 5 in the morning. On that corner, and it meant the worst possible thing. Neon turns to evidence when the night runs out of night and the daylight starts to organize it. What the neon illuminated at midnight looked like ambience at 5. It looks like a record of events. Raymond Jr. was on the corner at 5 with a control face and new information I hadn't been briefed on, which means someone briefed him, and the someone who briefed him had access to him I didn't authorize. Clarence! Because the someone who briefed him was Clarence, which I understood before Raymond Jr. spoke. I asked Raymond Jr. what Clarence had told him, which is the direct question in this particular situation. Raymond Jr. looked at the neon for 2 seconds, the 2-second pause of someone choosing the real answer. And he said, Clarence told me you were 7 moves ahead of every table, except the one he controls. And that the table he controls has been watching you since the first night on the avenue. And that the first night on the avenue was a stage Clarence set to see what kind of man you would become. And I said, how long ago did Clarence tell you this tonight? And Raymond Jr. said 11 o'clock before the room he knew you were gonna find the room, which means Clarence staged the room for me to find it, which means Clarence is still 7 moves ahead, which means everything I've understood about the arrangement is the understanding Clarence wanted me to have. And Raymond Jr. is standing on a corner at 5 in the morning, having been used as a message before I arrive. Neon turns to evidence when the night runs out of night and the daylight starts to organize it. What the neon illuminated at midnight looked like ambience at 5. It looks like a record of event. Raymond Jr. told me at 5 in the morning that Clarence briefed him at 11 before the room, which means Clarence is still 7 moves ahead of every table he's sitting at and not sitting at, which means I've been the subject of the arrangement since the first night I walked the avenue. I told Raymond Jr. 3 things while the neon was still evidence, and before daylight reorganized everything. I told him, what you do with what Clarence told you tonight will define the next 10 years of your life on this block. I told him, the watching quality I saw in you in October is still the most valuable thing on this avenue. I told him, I need you to walk away from this corner right now and go home before the daylight arrives completely. Raymond Jr. heard all 3 things and stood there for 4 more seconds with a controlled face. And then he walked not toward home immediately, but in the direction that would become home eventually, which is the correct answer, and told me that the watching quality was intact underneath the controlled face. Raymond Jr. was used as a message tonight, but he was not converted by the message into something else, which is the difference between being used and being owned, and it is the most important difference tonight. The neon was still evidence when he turned the corner, and the daylight hadn't fully arrived to reorganize. The neon is always evidence, we just call it ambience, because we need the night to function. What illuminates the deal also illuminates the betrayal, and the daylight doesn't distinguish between them. Raymond Jr. was on the corner having been used as a message by the man who taught me what messages mean. And the avenue was turning from neon to daylight, the way it always turns, without asking anyone's permission. And what was ambience is now a record, and the record includes everything the neon saw, and everything it did. Neon turns to ever. Neon turns to ever.
Yeah. I keep coming back to Johnson Avenue, not because anything is the same, nothing is the same anymore. The boombox on the fire escape is long gone from that building. The family in 3B moved to somewhere. The Bronx is now something else entirely. But I keep coming back because the walls remember differently than we do. The walls remember in the way that concrete stores frequency, not loudly, not legibly to the eye, but precisely, completely. The bass got into the building in the summer of '93, and it never left at all. Darius's work is under 17 coats of gray on that overpass, and the overpass still has its shape in the air above it every morning. Eddie wore the cardboard down to a shine at Tremont Avenue Park, and the asphalt still knows the grammar of a windmill from muscle memory. Raymond's voice is in the frequency of 125th in Lenox still. Not because Raymond stands there anymore, he hasn't in years, but because enough voices and enough cold winters make the air learn to remember. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase completely, not as wound, as record, not as grief, as permanent testament. I keep coming back to Johnson Avenue, because the walls still remember what the tenants changed and the landlord forgot, and the building quietly held. The bass is still in the brick, still holding it, still transmitting. I walk through the record store where Pete used to come every Saturday. It's a different store now, different inventory, different energy entirely. But in the back, in the crates that nobody touched recently, I found a record, a small pencil asterisk on the label in Pete's handwriting. Nobody else's marks records like that. 3 owners later, and the asterisk is still there on that label. And what it means is, this one is crucial, handle it with full care. And what it means is, Pete was here and he left something for whoever came next. And what it means is, someone cared enough to mark what mattered for the future. Marcus's tapes are probably warped by now, the shoebox probably gone somewhere. But the music in them got out, got through, got everywhere it needed to reach. Because Marcus understood that culture is a verb, and the verb keeps conjugating forward. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase completely. Not as wound, as record, not as grief, as permanent testament. The asterisk is still there in Pete's handwriting 3 store owners later. What he marked as crucial is still crucial, still sitting in the crate waiting. This is what the archive looks like when nobody built a building for it. The block doesn't just hold what was. That's the thing I misunderstood at 9. The block is always in the process of becoming what will be next. The cipher that Raymond started is still running in every city. In every cipher that started because someone saw Raymond's cipher and understood. The anchor phrase I planted in this album's very first breath comes back now, changed and earned. The block remembers everything. But here is what I didn't understand at 9 years old on that fire escape. It isn't just remembering as an act, it's building as an act. The block remembers, so you don't have to start from zero ever again. So the 9-year-old on Johnson Avenue on a summer night in any year has a floor and not a void when the music finally falls like rain on them. Written in every cipher, in every crate, in every wall still standing. Written in every bar Devontae refused to cut for any contract. In every tag Darius refused to stop painting over every gray coat. And every tape Marcus labeled in his own careful handwriting on the J card. In every park where DJ Ski ran the extension cord from the lamppost to the speaker. The block remembers everything the city tried to erase completely. Not as wound, as record, not as grief, as permanent testament. It remembers so you don't have to start from zero ever again. So the 9-year-old on the fire escape already has a floor and not a void. The block remembers, and now you carry that too wherever you go. This is not an ending. This is a wall with wet paint still drying. This is the archive still being written on every surface left to us. This is the boombox on the fire escape on Johnson Avenue, still playing. Summer of '93, and we're still here, and the music has never stopped. The ritual starts at 7. Not the night, the preparation that comes before it. The night gets the finished version, the mirror gets everything that precedes that. Raymond Jr. knocked on my door at 7:15. First time ever stepping out. He was dressed for what he thought tonight was, not yet for what it actually is. The mirror doesn't judge what it shows you. It just shows exactly what's there. And what you do with what it shows you is the whole education right in that glass. I've known men who couldn't look at themselves after 9 years on the avenue. Not because they were ashamed, because the mirror had stopped recognizing them. And they had stopped recognizing the mirror's particular version of the truth. Raymond Jr. stood in front of mine and looked for a long time before saying anything. The kind of long time that tells you somebody is actually seeing, not just checking. Not at the clothes, not at the surface, at the architecture underneath the surface. I told him, the mirror at 7 is the only one in this city that tells the truth. After 8 it starts telling you what you want to hear, because the night has started. And the night has its own interests that do not include your clarity about yourself.
The mirror doesn't flatter.
The mirror instructs every time you stand before it.
What you see before 8
is the only truth you get for the rest of the night. Raymond Jr. stood in front of mine and looked for a long time before speaking. The kind of long that tells you someone is actually seeing what is there, not just checking. And what you do with that seeing before the door opens behind you is everything. I told Raymond Jr. about the coat, which means the presentation and the message it sends. I told him about the shoes, which means the intention that carries you into each room. I told him about the posture, which means the conversation before any words are spoken. Raymond Jr. took notes in a way that wasn't literal. He took notes in his body's memory. Let the information settle into how he stood, how he tilted his chin going forward. That's the kind of learning that doesn't come from talking. It comes from watching closely. I watched Clarence for 3 months before I said 20 words to the man directly. And those 20 words were considerably better for the 3 months of prior watching. But Raymond Jr. had that quality, the watching quality, which is rarer than talent on the avenue. Talent on the avenue without the watching quality gets somebody seriously hurt by April. The watching quality without talent builds something that consistently lasts past any April. But the mirror doesn't flatter. The mirror instructs every time you stand before it. What you see before 8 is the only truth you get for the rest of the night. I told Raymond Jr. about the coat, the shoes, the posture, not fashion or style. The presentation is the first sentence of a conversation about who you are tonight. And the night reads the first sentence and decides everything before your mouth opens. We left at 8:15. That is the correct time for a young man's first night out. Not so eager, the night reads it wrong. Not so late, the evening's already been decided. Raymond Jr. was quiet on the walk, the exact right kind of quiet for this moment. Not nervous, quiet, not checking his reflection in every window, quiet, but taking notes with his eyes quiet, which confirmed he had been listening all along. The avenue was fully in motion by then, the 6 o'clock exhale long complete. Clarence caught my eye from his corner post and looked at Raymond Jr. for exactly 2 seconds, then looked back at the street without comment. 2 seconds from Clarence means approved. Raymond Jr. didn't know that meant anything significant, which is precisely the point. The ones who know what the 2 seconds means are the ones who already earned it previously. The ones who don't know yet are the ones who might eventually earn it if they keep watching. I remember my own mirror at 7, before my own first night on this avenue. I remember what I saw in it, and more importantly, what I couldn't see yet in it. The mirror told me, you're ready for what you think tonight is gonna be. It didn't tell me what tonight actually was. That part had to be learned in the doing. The mirror at 7 never lies, but it only tells you as much as you know to ask it. The mirror doesn't flatter. The mirror instructs every time you stand before it. What you see before 8 is the only truth you get for the rest of the night. The mirror told me when I was Raymond Jr.'s age exactly. You're ready for what you think this is. It didn't tell me what it actually was. That's what the night itself is designed for. Ask the right questions before 8. The mirror has no patience for them after. Raymond Jr. walked half a step behind me without anyone telling him to do that. That is the oldest protocol in this tradition. You don't rush ahead of knowledge. We hit the avenue at 8:15. The mirror. The mirror.
Said I don't know Saturday morning, the record store opened at 9, but Pete was already there at 8:45. Back against the door, coffee going cold in his hand, like prayer before the service begins. The crates were organized by nobody's logic, but the owner's mystery. An accident were built into the architecture. You came looking for one thing in the universe, handed you something you didn't know you needed till it was in your hand. Pete's fingers knew the difference before his eyes confirmed it. The specific drag of a sleeve that had been touched the right number of times. Not too much, that's overplayed. Somebody already got everything from it. Just enough. There's still something alive in there, something unclaimed. I watched him pull a 45 from somewhere in the middle of a crate. Hold it to the light from the front window like a jeweler checking the stone. Put it in the yes pile without a word, without hesitation, without doubt. The dusty fingers are a sacrament. The holy crates are the testament, and what comes out of the grooves when you lower the needle with care. It's Saturday morning at 8:45, the door not open yet, Pete already present. This is what devotion looks like when nobody gave you a church. We didn't talk much on Saturdays, it was church. The record store was the church and the crates were the congregation, and Pete was the preacher, and I was learning what it meant to treat someone else's music like it was sacred. The soul in those grooves was not an accident. Somebody sang that in pain or in joy or in the middle of the night when they had to. Somebody played that chord at 2 a.m. in Detroit or Memphis, and Pete understood that and handled the record accordingly with reverence. There is a version of hip-hop that forgets where it came from, that samples without acknowledgement, takes the feeling without carrying it forward. Pete was not that version. Pete would play you the original before he played you anything else. The dusty fingers are a sacrament. The holy crates are the testament. Somebody sang that chord at 2 a.m. in Detroit or Memphis in some anonymous pain. And Pete understood that and handled the record like testimony, not property. This is how you honor something that came from someone's real and specific pain. He would tell you the name, the year, the studio if he could remember. Said, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you borrowed from. The holy part was not the finding, it was the understanding that this crate was full of somebody's entire life compressed into vinyl. That these scratches were history, these labels were dates and places. These grooves were the precise frequency of someone's feeling at one specific moment. Saturday afternoon, the light changed in the front window differently. Pete had 40 records in the yes pile, maybe 50. Coffee long gone, store half empty, still going, still searching, still in conversation, like the crates were a dialogue that wasn't done with him yet. He'd go home and make small notes in the margins of a notebook by the turntable. A word, a time code, sometimes just a parenthetical question to himself. The kind of notes only the writer and the music understand between them. And if you were going to take that feeling and build something new with it, you owed it to that someone to build something worthy of the original. Something that would make them nod if they heard it. I heard you, I carry it. The dusty fingers are a sacrament. The holy crates are the testament. Out of those small pencil notes in the margins came the music we all danced to. Out of those margins came everything that came after every Saturday session. This is the communion, yours and theirs, and everyone who ever needed it most. Pete still knows which records have something left in them unused. The asterisk in pencil is still the highest praise I know in this world. Saturday mornings still feel like church when I'm standing near a crate, and the needle still knows the difference between property and testimony. 36 hours. 36 hours without 36 hours without adequate frequent sleepers when the body starts editing reality on your behalf. It cuts what it decides is redundant and keeps what the fear says is essential to surviving this. I've been awake since yesterday morning, which was the morning after the room that nobody left clean. And the world looks different at 36 hours, not worse, just more honest than it usually is. The avenue at 4 in the morning is the avenue without his costume on underneath everything. The neon signs that were selling something at midnight are just illuminating concrete now. The men who had things to prove have proved them or haven't into somewhere else regardless. What's left on the street at 4 is what the street actually is when the performance stops. I walked it twice, which is the protocol, but the protocol felt different at 4 in the morning. The first pass told me the information from the room has already moved in 3 directions. The second pass told me one of those 3 directions is toward a conversation I need to have soon. The question is whether to have the conversation before or after the 36 hours end. Because the 36 hour self and the rest itself will have that conversation very differently. The rest itself will be more careful and more eloquent and more likely to be wrong about the outcome. The 36 hour self sees it for what it is and says it before the editing starts. Up again. 36 hours without sleep is when the body starts editing the wrong things out of what you see. What you see at 36 hours is what was always there underneath the more comfortable version. I walk the avenue at 4, and the avenue at 4 is the avenue with no costume left on it. The neon is just neon, the men are just men. The protocol is just what 2 people decided it would be. And Clarence decided something about me before I was old enough to be the one doing the deciding. Simone found me at 4:15 on the stoop outside the building that I use for thinking clearly. She didn't ask what I was doing there. She sat down and looked at the same stretch of avenue I was watching. She done the math before she sat down, and the math had already arrived at the same place as mine. Simone has been doing this for longer than I have, and the longer time gives you a different vantage. I asked her, how long did you know about the arrangement before I found that room last night? And she looked at the avenue for 7 seconds before she answered. 7 seconds, not Clarence's 4. 7 seconds is an honest pause. Is someone actually thinking? Is someone choosing the real answer? She said, I suspected 3 months. I wanted to see if the room would show you before I had to. And the 3 months she suspected is the 3 months that feels like 36 hours right now. Because when you understand the arrangement, you were arranged inside, the time collapses entirely. 36 hours. 36 hours without sleep is when the body starts editing the wrong things out of what you see. What you see at 36 hours is what was always there underneath the more comfortable version. Simone sat down on the stoop without being asked and looked at the same street I was looking at. She had done the math before she arrived, and the math had arrived at the same place as my math. She said, I suspected 3 months. I wanted to see if the room would show you before I had to speak. The 36 hours is useful because it strips the protocol from the question and leaves only the question. The question is, what does a man do when the person who taught him the protocol is the protocol? When the 7 moves ahead was only ever about one specific board that one specific person controls. Clarence is old and the avenue is memory like concrete, and Clarence has been part of that memory longer than I've been old enough to have a protocol worth protecting or a table worth sitting at. The 36 hours says, don't protect what isn't protecting you back in any direction tonight. The 36 hours says, the arrangement you're inside of has been inside of you longer than you've known. And knowing is not the same as acted upon knowing, which is where the 36 hours has taken me, to the edge of acted upon knowing, which is the scariest address this avenue has to offer anyone. Because everyone on this block has been to the edge, and most of them look down and step back carefully. The ones who didn't step back are the ones who define what this avenue is in every version of its story. 36 hours, and I can see it all the way to the root system without the polite version covering it. Clarence played at the table, and I sat at it, and the table was always the thing that was studying me. Simone knew 3 months ago and waited, because some educations you have to finish before you can use them. I am at the edge of acted upon knowing. 36 hours of no sleep at 4 in the morning. And the avenue is watching the way it watched me the first night. 36 hours.
If I had to write it down, and I do, because Raymond Joyer is going to need the written version eventually, I would start at the beginning, which is not the avenue, but it's the space before you arrive at the avenue. The space where you decide if you understand what the avenue is asking for before you put the coat on. And the coat is the last thing, not the first thing, which is the first lesson and is worth the cost. Miss Delia told me once, before she knew what kind of nights I was spending below her third floor window, there is a difference between a man who lives by a code and a man who lives by the performance of one. The man who lives by the code doesn't need the room to see the code. The code operates in the room's absence. The man who performs the code needs the room, needs the rope, needs the 3-inch adjustment to function. I spent years thinking Clarence was the first kind because he'd been at the avenue the longest of anyone. And the years I spent thinking that were the years the code was being built inside me by the thinking. Which is the thing I didn't understand until the coat was buttoned right and the silence was 40 seconds. The education was real because the mistake was real, and the real mistake produces the real knowledge, and the real knowledge is the man who taught you the performance taught you something more than he intended. Because the performance, practiced long enough, teaches itself into being the actual thing underneath. The Mack's last lecture is not a lecture. It is a set of observations that Raymond Joyer can verify or dispute. I'm not passing a code, I am describing what the night cost and what the cost produced in exchange for it. Raymond Joyer will arrive at his own version, which will be different because he is different from me entirely. And different is correct. The avenue does not need the same man twice, it needs the next version of the knowledge. I am giving him the map I would have wanted at 8:15 on the first night walk before 8:30 arrived. Not the map of how to move through the avenue, the map of what the avenue was actually moving through you. The Mack's last lecture is not a lesson. It's an accountant that Raymond Joyer is welcome to use or dispute. Miss Delia's difference between the man who lives the code and the man who performs it is where I'll start, and where I'll end is this. Performing long enough teaches the performance into becoming the actual code. The night that cost what it costs produced something worth more than the cost, which is the ledger's final line. Raymond Joyer can verify this in his own time on his own Northside, stretch at his own 345. I'm gonna tell Raymond Joyer about Clarence, not as a warning, but as a case study in complete account. And Clarence was at the table before me, is at the table now, will be at the table in the form I can't predict yet. What Clarence did with the management was real enough that the real survived the revelation of the management, which tells you something about the standard required of whatever you decide to teach in this particular life. I'm gonna tell Raymond Joyer about Simone, the 7-second pause, the 3-degree posture signal, the way she kept the third floor light in view while operating in rooms that couldn't see the third floor, the way she knew 3 months and waited because she understood that some educations have to complete. I'm gonna tell Raymond Joyer about the coat button wrong and what it means when it's right. And I am gonna tell Raymond Joyer that the most important decision of any night is what you decide to be. Before you put the coat on, before the mirror at 7, before the avenue opens at 6, and before the rope. The Mack's last lecture is not a lesson. It's an accountant that Raymond Joyer is welcome to use or dispute. Miss Delia's difference between the man who lives the code and the man who performs it is where I'll start. The 7-second pause and the 3-degree signal are tools Raymond Joyer already has from his own watching. I'm naming what he already knows, so he knows that he knows it, which is different from teaching it. The avenue doesn't give you the knowledge, it confirms what you were paying attention to all along. The last thing I'll tell Raymond Joyer is the thing Miss Delia told me.
before she knew what kind of nights these were. The code operates in the room's absence, or it doesn't operate. Everything else is performance, and performance expires. Performance expires, and the man who performed it is left with the question of what he is underneath the expiry. I know what I am underneath, because the night showed me in 6 o'clock light with the coke button right. And what I am underneath it is still sitting at the table, and still at the table when the coke goes back on wrong. The coke goes back on wrong, and the avenue accepts its exits the way it accepts everything that knows its rules. Miss Delia's light will be on tomorrow night and the night after. Six o'clock. 6 o'clock in the light. 6 o'clock and the light changes in a way that only the block understands. The day crowd packs up their ambition and goes somewhere with heat and a couch. And the avenue exhales, does this thing it only does when the dark arrives. And everybody who belongs here starts to appear like they were always there. Clearance was already posted when I turned the corner. Coat button wrong on purpose, that's his thing, says it keeps them guessing. 40-something years on this avenue, knows the pavement by its sound. Can tell you the footstep of every man who ever mattered here by ear. He nodded, not hello. Something more specific than hello. Something that says you're on time. You understand what time means, I noted it. The doorman at Club Red had the velvet rope adjusted exactly 3 inches, that's the language. 3 inches means tonight is gonna be a certain kind of night. I walked past him without breaking stride. He didn't flinch at anything, that's the second language. Pace tells him everything he needs to read. The avenue is a stage and the lighting is not accidental. The night knows your name before the city does. The avenue opens at 6 and closes on its own terms. Clearance was already posted when I turned the corner. That tells you everything about how the night chooses to begin its work. And whoever arrives after the night arrives is already behind the count. The storefronts turn into something else at this hour entirely. What sold coffee at noon sells patience now. Different currency, different crowd. I know every window by what it illuminates from the inside out. Know which apartments are being slept in and which are being decided in tonight. The trump card of any night is reading the room before the room fully forms. Seeing the table being set 3 hours before anyone is invited to sit. The rules are older than anyone currently moving on the avenue. They were laid down by men who aren't here anymore to enforce them in person. But the avenue enforces them anyway. It has a memory like concrete, keeps every agreement made in the texture of its surface and its air. And it knows the ones who honor agreements from the ones who let them expire. The night knows your name before the city does. The avenue opens at 6 and closes on its own terms. The doorman at Club Red never looks surprised by what walks through, which tells you everything about what he has seen walk through that velvet, and everything about who he's watched try to enter and fail quietly. I walked the avenue twice before I stopped, that is the protocol. First pass for intelligence, second pass for position and presence. By the third pass, you're either standing or you're not, no fourth opportunity. The night is patient, but it is not generous with hesitation or doubt. A man who hesitates on the avenue loses something that doesn't return. Not money, not status, something more essential than either of those. It's a kind of credit that only the night extends and only the night collects back. Clarence watched me take the second pass without a single comment, which is the highest acknowledgement the avenue offers to a moving man. No words, that means he saw exactly what he needed to see in you. That means the night introduced me correctly without qualifier or apology. The city will learn your name tomorrow from the paper or the rumor, but the night knew it tonight from the way you held the corner clean. And the way you held the corner is a language written entirely in presence. Clarence understands this language and the doorman at Club Red understands it. And I understand it in a way the daylight never had the patience to teach. The night knows your name before the city does.
business. The avenue opens at 6 and closes on its own terms. The city will learn your name tomorrow from the rumor or the record, but the night knew it first from the way you held that corner without asking permission. And the night doesn't forget who it introduced and what it vouched for. 6 o'clock is the hinge. Everything before it is daylight business. Everything after is the other thing entirely and requires different tools. Clarence buttoned his coat wrong on purpose and nodded exactly once. And the avenue opened the way it always does, for those who know what time it is. Those who know what time it is.
Yeah. You don't. Yeah. You don't need us. Yeah. You don't need a studio when you got a park. You don't need a floor when you got asphalt and faith. The cardboard came from behind the appliance store on Jerome Avenue. They knew us by then. Left it by the dumpster every Friday. 1994 Tremont Avenue, Bronx, New York. 3 guys with a boombox and 14 square feet of cardboard. Eddie could windmill from a standstill. No run-up, no setup. Just decided to rotate and gravity didn't argue. I didn't break. I was the one who moved the cardboard, watched the circle, kept the crowd back, learned the vocabulary, top rock, footwork, freeze, power move. A whole grammar invented on this asphalt by people who had no other paper. Eddie's shoulders would drop right before the big move, like the body announcing itself before the verb. I learned to watch for that drop. Something was becoming more than movement. The body is the instrument, but the concrete is the stage, and the music is the contract between the two. Yeah, we had nothing but cardboard between skin and ground, and from that nothing came something the world had never seen. The dumpster on Jerome Avenue gave us everything we needed. Yeah, then came the photographers, the ones from downtown, from the magazines, from wherever downtown is. They came with film and telephoto lenses, and they smiled like they understood. And the art went from being ours to being documented. We didn't mind the cameras at first, felt like being seen. Felt like the world admitting we existed, had value, had skill. But there's a difference between being seen and being studied, between being celebrated and being collected like specimens in the jar. Eddie never signed anything, smart or stubborn, hard to say. He just kept dancing, kept the cardboard worn down to a gray shine, kept doing windmills in the park at 37. Same Tremont, same asphalt. The body is the instrument, the concrete is the stage, and the music is the contract between the two. But a contract needs 2 parties who both understand the terms, and we were only ever one of them when they showed up with the camera. The art moved inside. We stayed on the asphalt where it was born. The art moved inside studios, competitions, television, and the cardboard stayed outside with the people who couldn't afford inside. The underground and the overground separated, like someone drew a line on the floor and called it success. Some arts died when they're institutionalized, but breaking was too close to the concrete to be fully captured. Too close to the street to be extracted without leaving itself behind. I still see it sometimes. Kids at the same park, different cardboard, different moves, same negotiation with gravity, same asphalt waiting to argue back, same music underneath, saying again, one more time, you almost had it, don't stop now. The institution got the name, but not the thing. They got the trophy, but the trophy is empty without the asphalt, without the Friday night dumpster run on Jerome Avenue, without Eddie's shoulder dropping before the windmill start. The thing itself lived where it was born. Concrete, cardboard, open sky. The body is the instrument, the concrete is the stage, and the music is the contract between the two. signed in calluses and asphalt, and kept alive in the park. The only contract that never needed a notary, that never expired. We sold nothing and kept everything, and the everything is still here. Different kids, different Fridays, same dumpster run on Jerome. The cardboard wears down, but the grammar holds every time. Eddie taught me, the body knows before the mind approves it. Trust the drop in the shoulder. Something's about to become more than movement. You don't need a
Six in the morning and Clarence is at my table. The table I thought was mine, which was always his. He's dressed the same way he's been dressed since I've known him, which is the costume of patience. The coat is buttoned wrong on purpose. I've watched it for years and called it his thing. Standing here in the 6 o'clock light, I understand for the first time that wrong means something I missed. The Mack breaks when the board he's been managing turns out to be larger than he managed for. When the man he's been moving turns out to have been watching while being moved all along. I spent this entire night being the man moved, and this morning I am the man who watched while moving. And Clarence is at my table at 6 in the morning to find out which one of those I intend to remain. I walked in without speaking, that's the protocol. You don't announce yourself to your own table. Sat across from him with the 6 o'clock light between us, which is neither dark nor day, which is honest. Clarence looked at me the way he's looked at me for years, except the coat was suddenly buttoned correctly, which tells you everything that the coat button wrong was always telling you if you'd known to read it. Button wrong was the costume of someone presenting as approachable, as less than they are as a student. Button right is the costume of someone who has decided that the particular performance is complete. When the Mack breaks, the break is always the end of a specific performance. That was never the Mack himself. Clarence performed patience and performed mentorship and performed being 7 moves behind me. What breaks is not Clarence. What breaks is the performance, and underneath it is what Clarence actually is, which is the man who was at the table before me, will be at the table after me, has always been at the table. I sat across from him and I did not speak for 40 seconds, which is the longest silence I've kept at a table. 40 seconds in silence at a table with Clarence is its own kind of statement about what you have learned. And what you have learned is not something you can unsay by speaking before the 40 seconds completes. Clarence waited through all 40 seconds without breaking anything, which is also a statement which says, I expected you to take exactly 40 seconds. I accounted for that in my calculations. And the accountability tells you that the man across from you has been operating at a level you now understand. When the Mack breaks, the break is always the end of the performance. It's not the end of the man performing. Clarence is at my table at 6 because the performance is over. And what comes next requires a different table. I kept the 40 seconds of silence, and what I learned in it was more than I learned in a full year of watching. The coat button right says the student portion of this particular arrangement has concluded on both sides. Whatever comes next is negotiated between 2 men who both understand the full dimensions of the table. I asked Clarence one question this time, not the adjacent question, the real question, immediated and direct. I said, when you taught me about the protocol, was that for my benefit or for the arrangement's sustainability? Clarence considered it for 7 seconds. The honest pause, Simone's number, not the constructed precision. And he said, both. And then he said, which is why you're still at the table and not outside of it. Both is the answer. That tells you the teacher was not entirely cynical and not entirely clean at the same time, which is the most honest thing the avenue was ever offered through any mouth I've listened to closely. I sat with both for the rest of the available silence, and both took up more space than I prepared for, because the worst education is the one that was genuine and managed simultaneously without contradiction. The genuine part means something was real in the teaching, and the managed part means something was used. And now I have to decide what to do with the thing that was both real and used in the same breath and hand. The Mack breaks
breaks, and what's left after the break is not wreckage, it's foundation. What Clarence built was real enough to survive the revelation that it was also managed from the start. Simone knew 3 months ago because she understands that real and managed are not opposites in this world. Raymond Jr. walked home with his watching quality intact because the real part of the teaching reached him. And I am sitting at a table at 6 in the morning with the man who was both of those things, still breathing. When the Mack breaks, the break is always the end of the performance, not the end of the man performing. I asked the real question, and Clarence answered in 7 seconds. Honest, not constructed, both. And both is the most the avenue was ever offered through any mouth, and I accept it as such entirely. The table is still here, and the table knows what to do with 2 men who have finally agreed on what it is and what comes after this part.
I'm not the first and I won't be the last. And that's the thing they don't teach you early enough, that you are a link in the chain that started long before you arrived. And the chain doesn't end when you're done, it only continues forward. Marcus taught me that culture doesn't move itself, someone has to move it. Raymond taught me that preparation is an act of respect for the cipher. Pete taught me that acknowledgement is structural, not just courtesy between people. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you borrow from. Eddie taught me that the body knows before the mind approves any movement. Devine taught me that the 3rd verse is the whole point, never cut it for anyone. Darius taught me to write where they can't file it away in a cabinet somewhere. Jerome taught me that some circles require 3 laps before you earn entry. Vanessa taught me that silence can hold a standard tighter than any rule book. Every one of them learned it from someone who learned it before the block had a name. And I carry all of it, the whole chain, in every line I write today. Pass the torch, son, and keep moving. The borough is counting on the count, not stopping at any generation. I learned from people who learned from people who invented this language. The torch was already moving when I picked it up. It arrived warm in my hand. That's how you know it's real. It arrives warm, already burning for you. The torch has been passing since before I was born into any of this. Passed from the Bronx River organization to the park on Sedgwick Avenue. Passed from the park to the Cipher on 125th and Lenox Corner. Passed from the Cipher to the kid on the 6 train with the shoebox full of foundations. I've been doing this long enough to know what gets lost between one generation and the next. It's never the talent, it's never the skill, never the hunger. Those transfer completely fine. What gets lost is the context, the reason, the why it started it all. I've watched brilliant kids make brilliant work with everything they have, with no memory of the park at midnight, no knowledge of the extension cord, no relationship to the cold air and the cardboard and the cipher that built all of this. Pass the torch, son, and keep moving. The borough is counting on the count, not stopping at any generation. What gets lost between generations is not the talent or the hunger. It's the context, the reason, the why, the how it started in the cold. And without the why, the what becomes somebody else's product on a shelf. I don't blame the brilliant kids. I was young once and present focused. Cared about what was in front of me, not what came before any of it. But someone took the time to sit me down at a certain table and explain it. And the sitting down changed everything about every line I wrote after that. So this is me sitting you down at the same table. Not a lecture, a passing. One link handing the next what it needs to keep the chain from breaking at the joint where we connect. Take the torch and carry it in the direction of what you honestly believe. Make something with it that I couldn't make because I am not you at all. Then hand it to whoever is standing behind you and trust the chain was built to hold. Some people pass the torch and wait to see if they're being watched doing it. Don't look back, the borough sees it either way. The chain records everything. Make the work that the people who came before you would recognize as worthy. Not the same work, the next work, the work only you can make with this fire. The culture doesn't diminish because more people carry it forward together. It expands because each hand that holds the torch adds something new to it. Pass the torch, son, and keep moving. The borough is counting on the count, not stopping at any generation. This is me sitting you down the way someone once sat me down in time. One link in the chain, handing the next link exactly what it needs to continue. Don't look back to see if I'm watching. I'm watching.
And that's the entire point. The parks and the ciphers and the record stores and the subway tunnels. That's where I learned this. That's where you teach it to whoever comes. Pass it forward and don't wait for someone to give you permission to do it. The borough is still building, still here, still counting every generation. Every generation. Every generation. The Wednesday is the night the professionals choose for what they need to do. The amateur doesn't know about Wednesday. They think it's the weekend that counts. Simone taught me that distinction early. The real ones move on Wednesday. When the room is half full and the half that's there all understand exactly why. Simone moved through a room the way weather moves through a house. You didn't see her arrive. You noticed the temperature had changed and settled. She had this way of knowing which table held the authority tonight, which corner was being decided in, which door would stay useful past midnight. Miss Delia from the third floor used to say, a woman who reads a room doesn't read it the way men do. She reads what the room wants to become. Simone wore something that cost a number she never said aloud to anyone. The velvet was the kind of message that doesn't need clarification, context. She sat down and the room adjusted to accommodate what walked in. Not because anyone decided it should, because rooms do this for certain people. When someone walks in knowing precisely and completely what they are worth. Velvet on Wednesday. Don't ask me why Wednesday. That's the kind of question that tells me exactly where you're from and what you know. Simone moved through a room the way weather moves through a house full of people. You didn't see her arrive. You noticed the temperature had changed and held. And the room adjusted without being asked, without being told, without hesitation. The Wednesday men are different from the weekend crowd in every meaningful way. More careful, more practiced, less eager to be seen, being eager for anything. Simone knew this and used it the way a carpenter uses a level precisely to find what is straight and what only looks straight from a certain distance. She'd been doing this long enough that the velvet was not a costume anymore. It was a conclusion she'd arrived at about herself and about how the world works. Miss Delia would tell her, know the difference between a room liking you and a room needing you. Only one of those is a foundation you can build on. Simone listened to Miss Delia on that particular November Wednesday, and I watched her reply it in real time across a table and a very quiet drink with the kind of precision that looks like ease to anyone watching from the outside. Velvet on Wednesday. Don't ask me why Wednesday. That's the kind of question that tells me exactly where you're from and what you know. The Wednesday men are careful, more practiced, less eager to be seen performing. Simone read that room the way Miss Delia taught her. Need not light and build something lasting on the only foundation the night actually offers anyone. I've watched Simone work a room for 3 hours and never seemed to be working. That is the highest level of this particular art, when the art disappears into the person. The velvet was real and the Wednesday was strategic, and the ease was thoroughly studied. And none of that made it less. It made it more valuable, made it expensive to acquire. There's a version of this life that uses people and leaves them sitting in the same chair. Simone was not that version. She knew the difference between the arrangement and the arrangement that survives past the point where the arrangement ends cleanly, which requires a different kind of understanding of what the night is actually for. She told me once, very quietly, in the particular voice Miss Delia always used, but the velvet is not the protection. The velvet is only the presentation to the room. What protects you is what you know about yourself before you put it on tonight. Miss Delia keeps the light on in the third floor window until 3 in the morning, which is how everyone on this side of the avenue knows when to consider coming home. Simone always made it back before the third floor light went out entirely.
Not because Miss Delia ever asked, because Simone understood the distinction. That some things you honor, not because they're required, but because they're true. Velvet on Wednesday, don't ask me why Wednesday. That's the kind of question that tells me exactly where you're from and what you know. Miss Dilly keeps the third floor light burning until 3 in the morning. Simone always made it home before it went out, not because anyone required of her, because some things you honor before they ask. And the night has always respected that. The Wednesday room empty by 1:30. Professionals have somewhere to be. Simone stayed until 2:15, not because she lost track of anything, because leaving first means you were finished. And Simone was never quite finished. She left when the room was ready to release her, and not a single moment before that.
The overpass on the cross Bronx. Somebody put something on it. The overpass on the cross Bronx. Somebody put something on it. Something that moved at 50 miles per hour if you drove underneath right. 5 panels of concrete telling a story the highway couldn't erase fast enough. Darius been writing since he was 13. Started with his name, moved the characters, moved to full productions. Whole narratives across 5 panels of overpass concrete. The city sent crews to paint it gray, every time gray, not white, not any color. Gray. The color of something that wants to pretend the thing never happened. The color of official forgetting, the color of bureaucratic erasure. But gray is also a canvas. Darius said, this the way a monk describes patience. Said they painted, I painted, they painted. Said this is the argument, and I intend to outlast them. I watch them work quick, focus, no hesitation. 4 minutes start to finish on a tag, 8 on a piece, gone before the uniforms. They call it vandalism, and we call it the newspaper, the one that prints what the daily news won't run. The color of official forgetting is always gray, but gray is also a canvas. Darius said this like a monk reciting scripture, and the scripture was, I intend to outlast the paint crew. Every time. Darius got arrested twice and kept going. Community service both times. Some city officials was bright idea to have him paint murals in a recreation center, as if punishment and commission were the same vocabulary. He painted the murals, painted them beautifully, actually large and technically perfect. The way you paint for people who evaluate you, then walked out and tagged the overpass on the way home. Not defiance for his own sake, more like testimony, more like documentation. The recreation center wall is for the city to show donors, it funds the arts. The overpass is the press conference nobody scheduled, the editorial nobody edited. The wall saying, you can erase me every morning, and I'll tell you what you missed. They call it vandalism, and we call it the newspaper, the one that prints what the daily news won't run, as if punishment and commission were the same vocabulary. The recreation center wall is for them. The overpass is for us. Darius understood the difference at 13, and the city never caught up. The gray comes back, the gray always comes back, but underneath every coat of gray is what Darius painted, and underneath that is what came before Darius. And the overpass is just accumulated memory, wearing a gray coat. Drive underneath it at 50, windows down in June. You could feel the layers if you know what you're feeling for. The texture isn't just paint, it's time, it's argument, it's claim, it's every name that ever needed to exist outside its own head. This is the press conference the city never scheduled, the editorial meeting nobody was invited to, the archive that needed no budget, the archive that outlasted every cut by never needing a line item. Some things survive by being too close to the ground to cut. Some archives survive by moving faster than the erasure chasing them. Darius moves faster than the gray crews. Always has, always will. Not because he's reckless, but because the truth travels fast. And the gray always arrives a morning too late to stop anything. They call it vandalism, and we call it the newspaper, the one that prints what the daily news won't run. The wall remembers your name when the city forgets your address. The overpass is just accumulated memory, wearing a gray coat.
And every morning Darius reminds it what it's made of underneath the gray. Overpass is still there, the story's still underneath the curry coat. The gray is a palimpsest, not a conclusion, not an ending. Some conversations happen in aerosol because the paper wouldn't hold them long enough. Darius taught me, right where they can't file it away. Right where the filing cabinet can't reach, but right on the overpass. Overpass. Yeah. 3 in the morning is when the 3 in the morning is when the room shows you I'm not leaving this room clean tonight. And I know it now. No. Yeah. 3 in the morning is when the room shows you what it actually is underneath everything. The velvet is still on the door, but the door is now open for a different reason than before. The men at the table from 11 o'clock are still here, but they are different men now. 3 hours of the night, there's something to people that the daytime never has the nerve to do. Clarence was in the room. I hadn't expected Clarence to be in this specific room tonight, which should have told me something in the 3 seconds before I understood what it told me. I've been trained to read 3 seconds correctly, and the 3 seconds said, you were not told. You were not told, because the telling would have changed what you brought with you coming in. The room that nobody leaves clean is not a room that announces what kind of room it actually is. It just gets later, and the people in it get more honest, and the honesty isn't always comfortable. 2 men I respected for 4 years of this life were conducting a conversation with Clarence. The kind of conversation that has a structure I can read from the way their hands are positioned. Hands flat on the table means we are still discussing something that has not yet been decided. Hands off the table means the deciding happened before I walked through this particular door. Clarence's hands were off the table, which means the deciding happened before I arrived. Nobody leaves this room tonight without leaving something behind that doesn't come back with them. Nobody leaves this room clean. That is the first fact, and the room knew it before you did. Clarence was there when I arrived, and Clarence's hands were off the table already. That means the deciding happened before the room remembered to include me in the decision. And the moment I understood, that was the moment the room became a different room entirely. The walls of this particular room have heard 30 years of things they cannot unknow. The carpet has absorbed 20 years of arrangements that the daylight would call something else. Clarence sits in it like he was born in it, which tells me the room recognizes him completely. Recognizes the shape of him, the way the avenue recognizes the men who've paid into it longest. I am the newest person in this room by a calculation that becomes obvious the more I look. I am the one who was not included in the hands off the table moment that preceded my entry, which means I am either the subject of the arrangement or the person being arranged around. Either way, I am in the room, and the room has already decided what kind of room it intends to be. I've been in rooms that decide to be hostile. They do it loudly, they want you to feel it. This room decided to be something more patient than hostile, which is more difficult to navigate. Patient rooms are the ones you can't leave without leaving something, which is the point. Nobody leaves this room tonight without leaving something behind that doesn't come back with them. Nobody leaves this room clean. That is the first fact, and the room knew it before you did. The walls have heard 30 years of arrangements the daylight would describe very differently. Clarence sits in this room like he was born in it, and that's the part that changes everything. The room recognized him before he sat down, which means Clarence in this room have a history. I asked Clarence one question, not the question I wanted to ask, which is protocol. You never ask the question you want to ask in a room that has already decided something about you. Asked him about the man in the suit from midnight, which is the adjacent question, not the real one. And the way Clarence answered the adjacent question told me everything about the real question. His answer was precise, too precise. The precision of someone who had prepared for the asking. 7 seconds of eye contact without blinking, which is 4 seconds more than necessary for honesty. 4 extra seconds of eye contact is the tell of someone constructing the answer who taught me that urgency is the tell, was showing me urgency in slow motion, which is more sophisticated than regular urgency and more dangerous, and tells you more about the person, because it means they knew they would need to perform precision and they prepared the performance. I've been 7 moves ahead of every table I've sat at since Clarence taught me what 7 means. And standing in this room at 3 in the morning, I understood for the first time that Clarence had been teaching me to be 7 moves ahead of every table, except the one he sits at himself.
Nobody leaves this room clean.
I'm not leaving this room clean tonight, and I know it now.
The room that looks like education sometimes is the room that is extracting something from you.
Clarence taught me the protocol, and the protocol was his to set from the beginning all along. What I thought was a table, I was being prepared for.
Was always the table Clarence sits at.
And this is what 3 in the more.
48 bars, 48 bars, 48 bars, what up, 48 bars, 48 bars, yeah, 48 bars for the borough, starting now. No hook, no chorus, no apology, no bow. Just the architecture, language stacked 12 stories high. The Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem, Queens, compressed into every single line. I watched them come with their formulas and quarterly projections. Watch them tell us what we sounded like from their comfortable perspective. Watch them package what we made and call it a product and put a price on a thing and never asked to be a commodity. This borough raised me on syllables and consequence. Every word you say out loud is weight behind it here. Every verse you spit is either evidence or testimony, and I intend to testify till the courtroom empties out completely. The formula was always the same. Take what the block built, subtract the block from the equation, multiply by the people who pay to cosplay it, and divide the profits among people who've never slept one night in this borough. 48 bars for the borough, count everyone. I've been waiting 30 years to have this conversation out loud. They leased the frequency and forgot who built the language in the first place. The borough built the language. Now hear it speak for itself directly. Every syllable load bearing, every line structural. Nothing wasted here. I know 1,000 MCs who never got a call back from downtown. I know 1,000 beat makers who never got a placement on a list. I know 1,000 writers who painted walls for free and got gray paint back. And 1,000 DJs who made the party happen and went home broke every time. 48 bars for Devontae who kept the third verse intact. 48 bars for Eddie who never signed the paper they brought. 48 bars for Pete who always played the original before the sample. 48 bars for Darius who outlasted the great paint crew on the Overpass. 48 bars for Marcus with the shoebox under his bed full of foundations. 48 bars for Raymond who came prepared in November at 30 below. 48 bars for the city that never played us first. We played ourselves first. 48 bars for the borough, count everyone. I've been waiting 30 years to have this conversation out loud. 48 bars. 48 bars for Raymond, Jerome, Marcus, Devontae by name. For every name the industry filed under demographics and moved on from. For every third verse they asked somebody to cut and got told no. The block is the denominator, always was, always will be. The block doesn't disappear when you forget to credit it in the liner notes. It's the foundation that Pete talked about in the record store on Saturdays. It's the cardboard under Eddie's feet when the camera wasn't watching him. I am not angry, I am precise. Precision is what happens when anger meets 30 years of patience. Precision is what you get when you wait long enough to choose the right words, to say exactly what you mean with the exact words. It requires nothing extra. This is not a single. This is architecture with intention in every joint. This is 48 bars that the borough built and I only assemble. And I dare anyone to tell me this doesn't sound exactly like home. They came for the sound and left with a simulation. They came for the culture and left with the concept worth nothing without us. The block is still here, denser, angrier, more alive than they calculated. And the mic is still here, uncontracted, uncompromised, completely unimpressed. 48 bars and still standing.
standing on the same corner. 48 bars for the borough. Count everyone. I've been waiting 30 years to have this conversation out loud. I am not angry, I am precise, and precision is what you get when the borough waits long enough. Same corner, same frequency, same commitment to the truth. Count it. 48 bars. And I'm still standing where I always stood. The borough is still the borough. Count everyone. The language we built is still the only language that matters here. This is 48 bars. This is home. This is done. Count it. 48 bars. Count it.